dar flor cuando estemos al aire. Okay, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to our today's webinar with the topic AI-driven planning suite for the CFO's office, where we'll be talking about specifically how to transform FP&A in electric cooperatives and public power. This is our fourth episode in this series, Pipeline Innovation Lab, where we share with the audience about real cases and fresh perspectives, how organizations are transforming the way they are planning with an AI-driven planning platform like Pipeline. We are really glad to have you today with us, so thanks for your participation. Let me introduce myself and the experts that are joining us today. I am Rodrigo Duran. I will be your host today. I have 20 years working with companies across different industries from food and beverage to oil and gas, pharma, beauty, retail, and in different countries like Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, US, helping organizations to optimize processes and implementing AI-driven solutions. Currently, I am the head of business development at Pipeline. I am passionate about technology and market trends, and especially building strategic relationships that drive innovation and digital transformation. I am really glad today to share this webinar with two experts. First, let me introduce you Brian Murrell. Brian is a global finance executive with more than 30 years of experience in energy and commodity markets. He's a retired partner at Deloitte in the US, where he were leading both North American commodity trading risk management practice and also the power and utility sector. Today, Brian is a fractional CFO and finance transformation leader, and he's helping business in their enterprise transformation, finance transformation, building high-performing teams, and guiding organizations toward fiscal sustainability. And Jeremiah Sutrera is our other expert that is joining us today. Jeremiah is the business director for the electric utility sector at Novix in LATAM. Novix is a consultancy firm with more than 20 years of experience in financial planning and advanced analytics. He specialized in infrastructure and energy sectors, with a strong track record in leading projects in regulatory and financial consulting and implementing decision support systems across multiple countries like Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Mexico, India, and more. Welcome, Brian, and welcome, Jeremiah. This is how this session will run today. First, Brian will share with us his insights about financial and reporting challenges in electric utilities. And then Jeremiah will show us a live demo and how Pipeline Suite for the CFO's office helps to overcome those challenges. At the end, we will wrap up with a Q&A session, so please feel free to send your questions on the chat. We will be glad to answer your question at the end of the webinar. With that, let's get started. So it's a pleasure for me to welcome Brian Murrell, and now it's all yours, Brian.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Rodrigo, for the introduction, and thanks for sharing a little bit about my background. I couldn't have said it better myself, so I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share a few remarks. As you mentioned, I spent a lot of my career working with energy companies and close to 30 years now working with utilities of various types, various regulated environments. I was really excited to share a few opening remarks here as we get into the program. And really what I wanted to do here is cover a couple of things to sort of set the table, because really what you're here to see is the demo of the technology that Jeremias will show there at the here after I finish my remarks. But I wanted to kind of set the table and set some context. And why is it important to have this conversation? What are the challenges that the companies are presented with? And where do we go from here? So if we go to the slide content, I wanted to cover first, some of what many of you already know. You have a lot of reporting obligations and a lot of groups that you have to report to. You think about all the things that utilities are required to present to regulators, to stakeholders, to your leadership teams, and others that are looking at the information that you're presenting. And some of those reporting requirements are relatively prescriptive. You think about things like presenting to FERC, for example, for regulated utilities. There's a format that you're required to use and to follow. And some of those things that are more prescriptive in nature, that lends itself to a more pre-built system. So things you can prepare in your ERP or something, a subledger and reporting capabilities that are pre-built. Some of those reports, though, are more situational. So it might require some level of customization, may have situations where data that is presented needs to be customized to the audience that you're presenting it to, or maybe you're receiving inquiries about various things from outside stakeholders. And then sometimes it's internal research that is necessary. So if you present something in a financial report, and someone wants to do some research behind the information and understand, what's changed or what are the drivers behind that. There's some questions that you will get that are hard to predict before you get the question. And so some customization is needed. And sometimes the things that you're presenting are not strictly of a financial nature. There are plenty of instances where you're going to present non-financial data as well. So you think about things in terms of volumetric data, maybe quality, or kilowatt hours, or in a water utility circumstance, it might be water quality data. There's some things there that also may be of a non-financial nature that need to be presented. And so having some flexibility in the tools that you have available to you is important. And that's certainly something we'll want to talk about as we get into the demo later in our time together here. So again, you think about, there's federal reports to FERC and state regulators, or, there's state reporting requirements and other stakeholders. And all that comes with a number of challenges. And so if we go to the next slide, I'll cover a few of the challenges that cover different attributes in different areas of the organization, things that are challenges across the people within the organization, the challenges you might have in your process, and of course, technology challenges. And in many cases, the reporting, go to the next slide, please.
Yes, sorry, Brian, sorry to interrupt. I guess we're now watching the presentation mode, Rodrigo.
There we go.
Let me check. Here we.
I see challenges across people, process, and technology. That's where I want to be at this juncture. Yeah. So okay, as I was saying, there's
just 1 moment, please.
As we say, live television.
Yes, I was wondering if it only was my screen, but I guess we're watching the same.
And now it's okay?
Yeah, it's okay for me.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the interjection. Certainly, if we have technology challenges, so certainly apologize to our audience, but we'll get through it. And so given challenges, or speaking of challenges, there are a lot of challenges that I'm sure you're all accustomed to and are hearing about that really apply to organizations across the board, irrespective of the nature of the organization, the industry that you operate in. But certainly utilities have particular challenges, and some of the challenges that apply to everyone are more acute or more critical to utilities in particular, given how important utilities are. You think about the things that utilities do and the critical role that utilities play in our daily lives. Obviously, we couldn't even have this webinar without the electricity provided by the utilities in our various jurisdictions. As you think about the challenges that means in terms of finance and accounting, it typically is operating more as a cost center or a support to the business. So while I'm an accountant by trade myself, and I appreciate all the things that accountants do, oftentimes from an operational perspective, it's not necessarily the place where a lot of investment is oftentimes made. So there's some resources constraints in terms of funding and the opportunity to spend money on people and systems. There are talent challenges, attracting new hires, hiring the individuals, retaining them, upskilling them, and so on. Through the whole hire to retire cycle is oftentimes a challenge for businesses. That's always been true, and particularly true today. And then information technology modernization is a challenge. There's this concept of technical debt, all these dollars that have been invested in the past in large-scale ERP environments that maybe are aging and becoming less capable with keeping up and meeting the business demands of today. But you've already made that investment. That's a sunk cost that has to be managed and managed in terms of how you operate your business, and managed around in terms of how you modernize and change things going forward. And again, these are not unique to utilities, but if you think about how you translate that into the challenges that utilities have in particular, there's, again, those reporting requirements and regulatory frameworks and the mandate to present data for rate case purposes. There's a level of specificity that's needed there. There's a level of data tracking and kind of audit proof, if you will, that's needed there to prove that you're operating in an efficient manner to provide reliable, low-cost energy. A lot of pressure to keep costs low, reduce costs. Talent challenges again, and I think in the utilities industry and energy more broadly, it's been a challenge because there are just such very experienced, talented, knowledgeable people that have been in this industry for a long time. Even myself as an outside service provider to utilities, I've got 30 years of experience, and I'm working with people at utilities that have as much or more experience than I do, and so there's things that as they age out of the workforce and retire, you're losing a lot of that institutional knowledge. And the infrastructure challenge is pretty acute for utilities because you think about the feeder systems that oftentimes are needed. These would be like your SCADA systems as an example, where you're tracking a lot of data. Those are older technologies as well. And so we're facing a challenge in terms of how do we do more with less, or how do we manage these resource constraints in terms of how we're heading forward. And then, of course, you think about what I mentioned before, the essential role that utilities play in the data security things, this data security needs that comes along with that. You can't simply make changes for change's sake. You have to make sure you've monitored that data and you're managing that data and keeping it secure. So certainly something that we'll be mindful of as we move to the later conversations here. So if we go to the next slide. So all these trends kind of dovetail from what I just said. There's an ever-present demand for doing more with less in terms of resource constraints. There's a lot that's happening in the automation space, and I would say that would be automation around traditional ERP as well as some of those feeder systems that I just alluded to. As you think about some of these systems that are maybe even decades old. And then we have what I refer to as sort of this modern era of automation that really began a handful of years ago with things like robotic process automation coming into vogue, machine learning, and these older AI models, not to be confused with the newer recent rise of things like generative AI. There's a lot of technologies that companies have begun to implement and AI adjacent tools that they've begun to implement that are becoming more mainstream and institutionalized, but there's advances that are continuing in those areas. And then when you get to things like Gen AI and agentic AI, this is something you can't watch any news program or business program these days without hearing some reference to AI, and this is really what they're talking about. These have a lot of promising uses in the futures, but there's a lot of risks that come with the use of those tools as well. If you think about the concept of a hallucination that an AI agent could potentially experience, have to be very careful about how we're rolling these technologies out. So this puts a lot of pressure on the people, such as yourselves, that are managing your business. A lot of pressure on workers. How do we get the work done today that needs to get done today, but at the same time, making sure that we're educating and upskilling people to effectively use these new tools, both now and in the future. And I don't think this is a challenge that's going to be immediately resolved. Companies are going to be grappling with this for a while. And that's going to include how and when to use different staffing models, using traditional in-house staff employment for certain things, but then thinking about where it takes us in the future around potentially using outsourced service providers, or this concept of as a service as a delivery model. Are there ways to integrate that into the way that work gets done? So as we go to the next slide, just to kind of wrap up my portion here, there are still some certain non-negotiables as we consider these trade-offs. As I mentioned, particularly in the utility environment, data has to be trustworthy. It has to be reliable. That's true for many businesses, but doubly true in the utility environment, because we can't make business decisions with inaccurate or unreliable data. Reporting has to be fast. The demands for information and reporting, it seems like every year the request for faster information becomes more and more urgent. So we have to move quickly to make sure that the time critical obligations are met. And then those inquiries that I alluded to earlier in my remarks, if a new question comes in that's an unanticipated question, or a problem arises that requires some research, you have to have tools available to make sure that you can move quickly to manage that reporting. Processes have to be efficient. And that's both in terms of time and in terms of cost effectiveness. None of this works if it's not within the budget constraints from a financial perspective. And then data has to be secure. And I know certain types of data are even more critical from a security perspective. You think about customer data, it has different legal requirements attached to it, but also customer expectations. Customers want to know that their data as a customer, their personal data is kept secure. So the data security is certainly a very important thing, always to be managed. So with that backdrop, and I just wanted to cover that just to kind of put this into context of the challenges that you all are facing and your peers are facing. But wanted to turn over here now to Jeremiah, who's going to introduce and demo Pipeline as a way that utilities can leverage the platform and the tools that Pipeline offers in light of these challenges. Jeremiah?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Before Jeremiah show us the live demo, I would like to introduce about Pipeline a little bit about the main features of our planning platform. But thanks, Brian, for sharing with us your valuable insights about the current challenges that we can see in this sector. Just to introduce about Pipeline before the live demo, Pipeline is a powerful cloud-based planning platform providing the flexibility, speed, and modeling power we need for robust solutions in sales, operations, and financial planning. So we have mainly three features in Pipeline. The first one is that it's driven by AI ML. As Brian said during his presentation, in Pipeline, we have the possibility to work with agents. So that means that we can work not only with the traditional ML, just for forecasting, for example, but also with the generative AI in order to create agents to support our business analysts to create scenarios and getting insights from our data sources. The second feature is an integrated planning platform. That means that we can support here with Pipeline the end-to-end business planning process from sales, operations, and finance. That in the same platform, totally connected, integrated, and with that we can create integrated scenarios in real time. For example, about any kind of assumptions in the sales team and what is the impact in the financial team or in the operations. And the third one is a platform powered by Python. That means we are supported by an open source language, the most important language in data analytics. And that means that we have all the transparency and flexibility to create our business rules. We need that flexibility in this case, in this sector specifically. For example, we need when we are creating financial planning solutions. With that, it's my pleasure to welcome Jeremiah now for sharing with us the live demo and how Pipeline Suite for the CFO's office can overcome these challenges that Brian shared with us during his presentation. Jeremiah, welcome. Now is your...
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you both for the introduction and the interesting insights Brian has brought to the table. Well, in this part of the webinar, we will be focusing in a live demo, as Rodrigo mentioned, and this demo will be specifically talking about the Pipeline Suite for utilities, okay? I will present this from the browser live, okay? Pipeline Suite for utilities is a solution designed to streamline all planning and control processes within utilities, from very technical processes such as technical losses planning and control or quality of service planning and control, to more traditional business planning and control processes that are actually the ones carried on in the CFO office. This specific demo is focused on the main macro processes that affects directly the CFO office. And we can see in this menu, in the left-hand side of the screen, 3 macro processes that are more related to modeling. Okay, modeling needs and capabilities that Pipeline has in order to make processes evolution from a set of traditional spreadsheets that are among utilities. And the value proposal of this suite is to include and integrate these processes. We have, in the first place, financial close supporting modules. This is a very interesting and operational task carried on every month for the CFO office, normally relying in some other operational areas. For instance, in order to estimate the energy unbilled and the value of energy unbilled, to estimate energy purchase cost, pass-through costs, and gross margin. All these estimations complement what is coming from the ERP systems in order to determine what the actually financial statements are saying about the business at every month. So this is a very important set of complex calculations that need to be run in a very tight agenda at the end of the month, and Pipeline is here helping to make those processes to run faster and in a much more robust way within this platform. In the second group and the second submenu, we have business planning processes that includes all the forecasting rules of the business, from meter and reading schedule or demand, the very bottom of the forecasting process, up to the top of it, which is actually forecasting net income and cash flow. But of course, in the middle, covering energy account, energy balance, forecasting, energy purchase costs, revenues, gross margin determinations, and so on. The idea is that there you are including all the assumptions and the business rule that will determine different scenarios of the forecasting processes that need to be supported. For instance, budgeting, rolling forecasting during the year, running long-term forecast in order to cope with impairment test or analysis, debts, renegotiations, etc. And finally, we have here integrated a regulatory planning and control module, which is actually including all the regulatory rules in order to see how the business decisions are impacting in future tariff revisions, processes, or rate case analysis. And of course, the feedback of this or the results of these simulations impact directly upon the business planning process. So this is a very important integration that Pipeline Suite for Utility delivers. And in the right side of the screen, we can see more reporting associated processes. Performance and control are reports specifically set up in order to explain results every month once the financial statements has been defined. Of course, in general terms, we have to explain what's happening with cash flow, what's happening with the net income, the gross margin, and main drivers such as the energy balance, energy account, or demand. Then we have another set of outputs that are relevant, or the reports that are relevant, such as financial statements, which actually includes actual and forecasted data coming from the left, from the models of forecasting I have already talked about. And finally, some outputs pre-arranged in order to consume scenarios and so on in a very fast way for different stakeholders, and motivating and promoting a self-service culture regarding critical information. As you can imagine, there is a lot to be presented here. So I will be focusing on one of the specific values this integration delivers to the CFO's office, and we will try to see how the gross margin explanation at the end of the month is working, and the value of having all those other processes inside the platform. Here's one of the dashboards that Pipeline presents. We have here the two alternative scenarios to be compared. We will be comparing right now the current year actual and forecast, the rolling forecast for the current year, with the information of the last year, the classical comparison of the current year versus the previous year. We can select another scenario, a budget, another rolling forecast. We have also information here about the size of this company that is delivering information here in this demo. We have a small holding of 2 distribution companies. We can choose which one of them we want to analyze. Let's keep with the consolidated information. We have a very important information here also, that is the last actual month that we have information completed the platform. This is very important because it will instantly it is saying to us in a very fast way what is the last month with actual data, and from which month on we are watching projections. We have here a selector in order to analyze the last month that has just closed. We are in this demo watching information up to September 2023. We can analyze the year to date for the first 9 months of this year. We have also the year to go analysis here. This is very interesting because this is consuming information that is being actually calculated alive in the modules of business planning. And we have a quick glance of what the full year is about to be if the forecast is completed or achieved, okay? So let's see some more information we have here. We have a comparison of gross margin, $28 million increasing from the previous year. We have here a breakdown of the main drivers, trying to explain how much of this difference is determined by those drivers. We have demand as the main driver here, explaining almost half of the difference and the growth of the gross margin. There are other economic drivers such as tariff or distribution added value cost, the effect of losses, the cost of energy. Adjustments are bringing here information related to the estimations and reversions of the financial close. So the idea is that you automatize here every explanatory report that recurrently is needed in order to follow the behavior of the business. And one interesting thing here is that we have also the explanatory variables that are determining these values. For instance, this almost $14 million increase in demand, increase in gross margin explained by demand, is actually explained because we have a 7.8% increase in demand from comparing to the previous year. So we can go and see, well, what's our expectation for the rest of the year. We have a 5% increase expected for the rest of the year that will deliver us $3 million more compared to the previous year. And if somebody asks us what's explaining this 7.8% of increase in energy demand, we can come to the demand report here in the performance and control module. And we are using here econometric methods in order to to make more accurate forecasts, and they are held in the business planning module. But we are also using those models in order to make a breakdown of the drivers explaining the behavior of demand. So we have here, for instance, the same time span alternatives. I will go back to the year to date, and we will see that the 7.8% of increase is explained by different variables such as climate. Temperature is a key driver in utilities, and it is explained in this case half of this growth we were seeing. We have also other drivers such as economic activity, new residential customers, new non-residential customers, and other relevant variables there. But let's see quickly an example of how these integrations can deliver not only an explanation of the past, but also insights about the future. So if I come here below, I have a breakdown of cooling degree days information, which is actually the main variable explaining energy consumption and its correlation to temperature. We have here a graph showing the actual behavior in blue of this variable and the forecast of temperature behavior for the last month of the current year, and we have in green the last year information. Obviously, we see a very important gap, a relevant increase in this variable, saying to us that it's actually a hotter year, the one we are observing right now. We have here some additional information of this variable. In particular, if I select here the year-to-date months, we will see what has been the behavior of this variable along history. And we can see here that the average cooling degree days for a typical year in this series is like 1,000 cooling degree days, and we are watching 1,150 cooling degree days, which is actually the increase that is explaining the demand behavior. And we can also understand from this view that it is possible to see even hotter years, as the past has shown. Okay, so I'm going to simulate in a very fast way with these assumptions of the temperature that we are assuming for the rest of the year, and I will select for distribution company number 1 an extreme year. Let's see what the history says about the year-to-go months. And we have here 2015 as the hottest of all the series. So let's select for this case 2015. And we will have an effect for the year to go that instead of 5%, we will be having 7.9%. And in gross margin, the $3 million we had for the year to go impacted from demand will be changed to $4 million and a half approximately. So the idea here is that you have in the same process of performance and control the ability to run scenarios taking advantage of all the information and the processes you have here in pipeline. Okay. So this was to give you a quick view of all what is possible or the value that there is in pipeline of integrating these processes. And let's go now to see a little bit more of the additional value that agents and assistant bots can deliver in this context. I have thought about 2 examples. There are plenty of applications, but perhaps 2 are relevant in order to show you use the potential of this new tool in the context of these processes. Let's go here first to the income statement report. We have here a summary with plenty of information. We have actual and forecasted information for the 2 distribution companies and consolidated results. We have monthly breakdown showing us actual information up to September, as we know, and forecasted information from then on. We have a history going back as far as 2006 and a forecast covering the current year, which is in this demo 2023, and 3 more years. Okay, and the idea is that we can ask, in the same way as we use ChatGPT today, some critical or interesting questions and use the bot in order to have a quick answer and analysis. Okay, these questions take like a minute and a half to be answered, and in order to focus on the output, I have some of those questions already done and answered. I will show you how it works in a much faster way, and then in the next example that I have for today's webinar, I will make the question alive. Okay, so in this first case, I will ask. We have asked to the assistant bot that using the P&L data and concepts, explain for this one the annual evolution of EBITDA presenting different type of charts. The question is written here. I will not repeat it right now. After a minute and a half of analysis, he delivered this answer in the same way as we are used to use ChatGPT today, with some key insights. He explained us below is an overview of distribution company number one's EBITDA evolution by year, together with complementary visualizations to understand levels, growth, and drivers. And he's suggesting to open the interface to explore the chart. This means the assistant has created a new dashboard with the information that is supported in this summary he's doing. I will go to that dashboard by clicking here. Of course, the aesthetic and setup of this is a little bit more simpler, because it is a quick insight with information of EBITDA. We have here the EBITDA in an annual base, okay, and its evolution. It's this smaller. We have the difference of EBITDA year by year, seeing the years in which EBITDA has increased and the ones where it has decreased. We have complementary information of the drivers, revenue, supply cost, OPEX, and we have a variation, a growth rate, an annual growth rate of EBITDA year by year. Okay. Once he carry on this analysis, he asks to us for additional insights that he can deliver. Okay. I ask to add a waterfall chart to see the EBITDA evolution of EBITDA, the EBITDA evolution year by year, and he again delivered the same dashboard, but including a waterfall chart. We are watching in green the increases and in red the decreases of EBITDA. And finally, he was asking for some other insights that he can deliver, and I asked only to add a chart with EBITDA revenues ratio, and I asked to include a benchmark with distribution company number 2. Take a look that I wrote in the wrong way EBITDA, but he interpreted in the right way, and he added a benchmark chart showing this ratio that I asked for. So this might be a little bit simpler, but it is a powerful way to incorporate the power of ChatGPT and assistant bots into the business processes. And of course, we can ask for tables, we can ask for plenty of other information. Okay, this is just a brief example of how the assistant bot can deliver insights and dashboards in a very, very useful way for different analysts. Okay. Having presented this first example, let me go now to a more operational case where we will be using the assistant bot as a support in order to gain efficiency and time running critical processes like the financial close processes. I will focus on the energy purchase settlement, which is actually the estimation for energy costs at the end of the month. As some of you may be familiar with, the time to have the official information of the market in order to appropriately define the costs that you have to pay to suppliers, to generators, and so on, normally takes a few weeks after the month has closed, after the last calendar day of the month. So when accounting processes need to deliver this information at the end of the month, they have to estimate this information. These estimations require handling both operational data, for instance, energy that is incoming to the network of the distribution company, and economic data, such as the PPA, the purchase power agreements that you might have signed, the information of the market, if you are buying energy or selling energy into the spot market. So there are plenty of variables that had to be considered in this estimation. And one of them that is very heavy in terms of amounts of data is the control of the energy that has entered into your network. This is normally done by an analyst from an operational area, okay? And what we have in this dashboard is information about the energy that has inflow into the network of each one of these distribution companies. It is on an hourly base for the entire month. And as you can see here, there is a gap here. For this case, let's make a zoom. We have some strange behavior here for distribution company number 1 on the September the 20th at midday, approximately, okay? So this will require, and normally requires the analyst to go and check for errors in actual data and to try to fix them. And so this dashboard here supports this process. Normally, the analyst will export this information to Excel in order to perform and analyze whether there is some missing data, whether there are zeros that should not be there, and try to estimate in an accurate way this the best way to fix this data. So I will go straight forward to use the bot in order to help us in this case. And we will ask the assistant bot if there are zeros or empty values for consumption data. And if so, indicate date and company and propose a replacement with the hourly average consumption, considering if it is a working day, a Saturday, or a Sunday. I will send this question. It is important to consider the typical day, because as you can see in this series, you have here a behavior that is very similar for 5 days in a row, which is actually from Monday to Friday, and then you have Saturdays and Sundays. So what we are asking here is for the assistant bot to propose information that is considering this effect in order to have a more accurate estimation. So he's now saying to us, here's what I found and how I propose to fix it. He has checked all the hours of the months. Rows, he's saying that there are 3 rows with issues, nulls or zero consumption values, and the affected company is Disco 1, okay? Well, there are some other insights there. I don't want to lose too much time there, but I will go to see the table he has prepared with the proposal. So he's here presenting the date, the distribution company, the hour, what type of day it is, and the value that he's suggesting us to replace the zeros with, okay? So what I'm gonna do is to copy this information to bring here to the corrected data input, which is actually where the analyst will be adjusting this information. And finally, I will go and copy the 3 suggested replacements, and we will have to see how the series has been fixed, okay? So once we're completed this process, we confirm the adjustment and the process can move forward. This example that just take a few minutes probably will take an hour and a half, 2 hours of an analyst. And the important value of this kind of help is that hour in the context of a financial close means a lot. So this is a very powerful way to understand how agents of AI can help to improve efficiency, accuracy, robustness. And this is just a quick example, but there is a lot of things, of additional supports that this kind of functionalities can deliver to us, and that pipeline is bringing to us in the context of some other processes that are already covered by this application. Well, guys, this is the examples that I have prepared for this webinar. I don't know if you have any questions regarding this. I'm open to hear you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you for your excellent presentation, for sharing with us real-world examples of how this generative AI can support us in our business, in our daily work with these agents, supporting business analysts to create scenarios to handle this huge database. It's really interesting, and thanks for sharing with us the demonstration. So now we will open the floor to the Q&A session. Let me share my screen again. So please, if you have any question, you can share with us on the chat. But we have just here a couple of questions because we have 5-8 minutes. So the first question is for Brian. About Brian, according to your experience, what do you think are the main soft skills, about challenges in the soft skills when we are running a digital transformation project? What are your thoughts about that, Brian?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I guess before I get into answering that directly, I just want to comment on what Jeremiah just showed, because Jeremiah, she made a key point, I think, which will tie into my answer to the question. But you think about the use of technology and the ability to save an hour. I mean, some would say, oh, it's only saving an hour, but it's the timing of when that hour occurs. So if you're in a crunch time and you're trying to present financial data, to a board, let's say, and you're short on time, being able to save an hour, is a proverbial lifesaver, right? It gives you that hour back to focus on something else. And I had an opportunity to talk to a CEO of a smaller organization recently, where this would have been tremendously helpful to that individual, because they actually were receiving information. They thought they were going to get something on a Friday, and it didn't come until Monday, and the board meeting was on a Tuesday. So it was just kind of a real life example where these types of accelerators could be tremendously helpful. So really, to kind of go back to the question about challenges and how people are facing the use of various technologies, a challenge oftentimes is understanding what you intend to use them for. And so you're implementing and selecting a tool that is going to be fit for the purpose for which you intend. And so if you have an idea of, like, I want this to be an accelerator to my reporting process, or I recognize I have those legacy technical debt type systems that I referred to in my opening remarks, you may not want to change all those things. You might say there's just too heavy a lift to go in and implement an entire new ERP. But if I had a tool that worked with those together and could layer on top of that, and then help me to answer those questions quickly when I need to answer them quickly, it gives me a tool to dig deeper into the data to find root causes. That's usually is a challenge for people. You can see that something's changed, but why did it change? And what information can I gather in the data that helps me come up with a better question to take to the business? I see a lot of companies, if they frame that well on the onset in terms of how they're deciding what they want to implement and how they're bringing tools into their environment for their use, that they're going to be more successful, because they know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so they're making choices about how to deploy technology that, again, are going to be suitable to the demands and the needs of the business.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Brian. One question for Jeremiah. As it is a suite with several modules, pipeline, as you showed during the demo, can pipeline be implemented in phases, or must be a one-time project what is your experience about implementing these kind of projects where you have several modules that you can integrate? We can work in phases, which is first or which is the following. What are your thoughts?
No, it's a great question because it seems overwhelming for people that is used to handle these processes. This can also seems a little bit too much. No, and there are plenty of alternatives. Our approach is always to move in a scalable way, taking advantage that pipeline allows us to do that in order to guarantee that we are delivering value within a reasonable time span, a project of 3, 4, 5 months in the worst cases. And I think it's perfectly suitable to start wherever you want. We have cases starting, for instance, with the support of financial close processes, and some others starting with the business planning process, which is actually the more the initial value proposal pipeline. Actually, the name is related to planning, right? But we have been surprised by some customers, by companies trying to fix problems in the financial close in the first stage, and then moving forward once they have actual data coming to the platform to recreate the business rule in order to support the business planning process, and at the end, including performance and control or regulatory planning processes. So there is a variety of ways to cope with this. Sometimes depends on the size of the customer. We have cases where we have one utility, one distribution company. The whole business is one distribution company with all its complexity, as you have seen. And some other cases where we are dealing with holding groups, energy groups, with more than 100 companies, covering the entire value chain of the sector, from generation, with all the different alternatives of generation nowadays, transmission, distribution, commercialization, service companies, the holding itself. So we know there are a variety of configurations for companies running this business in this industry. We have plenty of experience to analyzing the best alternative for each one of them in order to start with a project that is reasonable, with low risks for the company and the champions, and also that guarantee value deliverables in a reasonable time.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you. Okay, with that, we are concluding our webinar, today's webinar. Please feel free to contact us if you need further information, further discussions about these topics we were covering today in the webinar. On the screen are our emails. We will be glad for new discussion with you. I want to extend a special thank you to our speakers today, Brian and Jeremiah. It was a pleasure to share with you this webinar. And thank you for all you that are joining us today. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.